Trump has been indicted again. The details you can go look up online, but what does this really mean for Biden? I think that's the important stuff for us. What are your thoughts on this? How's this going to affect Biden?
Yeah, so most of the coverage right now is about the details of the indictment, which are pretty like thorny. I mean, it's like 37 felony counts or something. It doesn't sound good. And then there's a lot of sort of like liberal publications, news publications, crowing about how this might really be the end for Trump, which we've heard, I don't know, 15 times, 30 times since 2019, or even earlier than that. But I think that a lot of coverage you're not seeing is like, what does this mean? What bearing does this have on an eventual Republican versus Democrat presidential election? There's a lot of talk about like, does this throw Trump out of the Republican primary? He's still the front runner by a lot, so that seems unlikely. And this is a big legal case, so it'll take months, if not years, to resolve. But I think that we have to start to like wonder how this is going to impact the general election too. And one of the ways it might impact the general election is if Trump is truly out, that means that there's going to be a different candidate who's the candidate for president for the Republicans. And, that probably is a bad outcome for Joe Biden. Like, I think a lot of what we've heard is that, in Biden's favor is that like, he's the guy who beat Trump last time. And so we should, have him run again so that he can beat Trump again a second time, which like, I don't really ascribe to that theory. I don't think past performance is, indicative of future success, but nevertheless, this is like one of the strongest things he has in his corner. But if Trump is really just like totally weighed down by these legal problems, I mean, they really are piling up, and at some point, they're going to become a millstone, and it will just be too hard for him to overcome them.
Right.
It means that we're going to end up with someone like Ron DeSantis in there. We're going to end up maybe with Nikki Haley in there. I mean, there are a lot of people who are lining up now to take up the mantle here. And it's like, we're thinking about how well those people would do against Joe Biden, because it's a completely different race with one of those people at the top of the ticket.
Yeah, totally. And you're saying Biden being able to say that he beat Trump last time and therefore he's the candidate to beat him again, which is what the Democratic Party is saying, is what the liberals are saying, doesn't mean anything if Trump is not going to be the candidate. And you say it's one of his strongest tools in his bag. It's the only tool in his bag, as far as I can tell. It is the entire candidacy of Joe Biden this time, is we beat Trump last time and we can beat him again. He doesn't have a ton of real accomplishments to run on that impress progressives and activists and organizers. So really, I can beat Trump is all he's got. And if Trump actually is hurt by this, which I don't really think he will be, I think Trump is indestructible, Teflon Don. There's almost nothing you can do to convince his base that he's not the best guy for the job. While DeSantis is oftentimes hurting himself by making himself more well-known. He's not a likable guy. Nonetheless, it's interesting to think that if this actually hurts Trump, if he doesn't drag out this legal process for a decade or whatever rich guys are able to do with this stuff, the idea of 81-year-old Biden on a campaign trail that he's not going to be able to hit that hard against, what if it is a ticket of DeSantis and Haley, super young people who can do 10 events a day, every single day for months on end, getting nonstop media coverage the entire time, while Biden is going to have to do a light schedule because A, he's the president, he has a job to do, and B, because he is 81 years old. We don't like to make the age argument here, but like, it's just a reality of running for office is it's exhausting. So yeah, not really looking good. But again, I don't think this is really going to hurt Trump ultimately. I don't think it's going to do anything. Do you think it's going to hurt Trump in the primary?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on like what the appetite is among his competitors for hitting him on this. Like, we've seen already, Ron DeSantis is like carrying water for him. They're so terrified of him, and it's really funny to watch. But they feel like, they'd rather hit the Justice Department over this. They'd rather say that this is a gross miscarriage of justice than say like, hey, my opponent got indicted on 37 federal counts. which in any other world, in any other arena, would just be like absolutely the kill shot you want for your opponent. So it really shows how what a black hole he is and how much he warps everything around him. That he has to have his opponents going to bat for him, who have like been critical of him in other ways, But it's just funny to watch them say like, I disagree with Trump about this and that, but like on this issue of him, imperiling like state secrecy, which is supposed to be, sacrosanct to right wingers and hawks,
Right.
we're good with that. That's, I think the Justice Department is really overreaching. So pretty funny to watch that stuff take place. The other
Yeah,
thing
it's so
I'm
weird.
concerned to,
It's like the opposite of swift boating. They're taking the thing that is
yeah,
obviously his worst quality and they're saying, "No, no, no, don't worry about it," even though that's their opponent. It's the primary's already decided. Like, if they're
yeah,
that afraid of him, at what is gonna happen to make them bold if he can be indicted and they're still not the other GOP contenders are still not bold enough to say anything bad about him, to try to peel his voters away from him, then why would his voters leave him? It doesn't.
totally. And like this is happening in a vacuum, so we'll see what happens when like the primaries actually get underway because there's just no check on his popularity right now. Like as far as people can tell, including like his competitors, he's by far the most popular person in the Republican Party. You have to be on board with him. I think the only way that we'll see people start to use this against him is if he totally tanks in an early state and it just turns out like people start to feel like, oh, so actually voters do care about this, even Republican primary voters. I think that's unlikely to happen. And I think where I agree with you is like if people are unwilling to use what's like probably the best talking point of the last, 3 or 4 decades against a political opponent, if they can't use that against him, then it's hard to conceive of like how someone else will beat him. Some will, like Chris Christie will go for him on it, but Christie probably won't make it out of like, the 2 to 3% range. So we'll see.
Yeah, Christie has no shot. I'm not even sure why he's running unless he's really running for a job at CNN or Fox News or something, which is
Right, right, right.
probably what he's doing. That's what I thought Pete Buttigieg was doing too in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah, and then he
Uh,
got saddled with a transportation.
yeah, he
Bummer for
unfortunately
him.
got a real job that he's not good
Yeah.
at instead of a other fake job that he would also probably not be good at. But I
Yeah.
guess
The
that
other
then
thing
brings up.
too,
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanna say, like, I feel like the real problem with, like, the maybe Trump's not on the table thing is that, for most voters, like, the 98% of people who aren't like us and aren't, like, gluttons for punishment and don't really pay attention to this stuff until very late in the process, I think are gonna be really enticed by just, like, the new blood argument, So if it's, like, Trump versus Biden, it's like, "Okay, bummer," we have to pick one of these guys who are already, like, very known entities to us. But if like voters are turning on the TV and they see Biden and then they see two other people, some ticket that they're not that familiar with, DeSantis and Haley, or Haley's at the top of the ticket, Tim Scott manages to get in there, whatever it is. I think that a lot of people will just think like, yeah, I mean, these people seem they're not Donald Trump. They seem like fresh blood for the political scene. Like people aren't following, I think, for the most part, what's happening in Florida or whatever Nikki Haley's been up to. And I just worry that that will be enough for some voters who are sort of like not very ideological to just say, yeah, I'll go for those people. Why not? And that's like a big trap also for Biden.
Right. I think we get to see how well DeSantis's Florida strategy works well in the rest of the country. That reminds me of Hillary. I remember talking to some Hillary folks back in the day, and they took their Florida strategy with Hispanics and used it in every other state. And they just did not change strategy from state to state for anything. And it was
Yeah,
obviously a
classic.
huge failure. So like how well will DeSantis's anti-Disney big state government stopping schools and colleges from teaching certain subjects and anti-trans stuff, the anti-woke stuff. They're going after Disney stuff is insane. But it's going to be interesting to see how well any of that translates to the rest of the country because the rest of the country is not Florida. And I don't think he knows
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's probably too weird for everyone else. That's like my guess that it's just gonna seem like, why are you battling Disney World? The place where dreams are made. Like, what's your beef with them? I think that's gonna be too strange, but we'll see.